Do you want to do a little experiment?
Sure, go ahead.
Where are you looking at?
I'm looking at camera.
And what do you see?
I see camera, I see stand.
And what else?
I see person who sits behind camera.
Can you close your eyes? And what do you see now?
I see you and the camera, and I still see weaving, and I see the big silver maple tree in my mind's eye, and the driveway.
Can you tell me more how you see them?
I see them as almost as an after image of what I was seeing before. They've embedded themselves in my brain somewhere, somehow, so that I can still recall the images. They may not be entirely correct, however, but it's more what I remember them being.
And what do you see now?
I see the propane tanks. I didn't really want to see them.
And where do you see it?
Right behind you. Where in me do
Yeah.
I see them? I see them much more in the peripheral, on the eyes, on the outside of the eyes, rather than before they were more inside. Now they're out there on the surface.
About 2.5 years ago, we bought a piece of property at the bottom of the hill, and it's probably about 0.8 of a mile away from the Clark's Gully, which is listed as the birthplace of the Senecas. And the third night that we owned the property, I was down there doing repairs, and during the night I slept overnight. And during the night, I had this dream, and in this dream, an old Indian, a Native American, came to me in this dream, and he told me that the spring on our property was a healing spring, and that I needed to build a tub so that people can come to our house and be healed. The Indian actually explained to me how the tub was to be built. Unfortunately, by the time I woke up, I could no longer remember that part of the dream. The dream felt incredibly real. It just was so vivid, and it just left such a deep impression with me.
Well, I know a folk story. It's about a man who walks into a darkened shed and sees what he believes is a cobra coiled up right in front of him, and he freezes. He's just totally like a deer in the headlights. He's just totally frozen. And as the sun comes up and more light shines through the window, he sees that in fact it's not a cobra at all, but just a coil of rope. And so that's that change. He had gone from being scared for his life to just seeing something benign, a coil of rope.
So if I see a person for the first time, I just don't really judge them, but once I have 2 conversations, I might think that they're into something, if they're into sewing, but then once I get to know them, they might be into something different by communicating and seeing.
We were protesting some law that the federal government had. And on the other side of the street were people protesting for the government's position. And we were yelling at each other from across the street. And at one point I dropped my sign and I thought, I'm going to go talk to these people. Even though I think they are so wrong. How could they can't even be humans really if they're believing this, because it's so not supporting of human values. And so I walked across the street and I started to talk to a woman there who was holding a big sign with a bunch of American flags and the history of the Constitution and all this on a huge sign. And as I got to talking to her, I realized that she's a human being too, and she just has a different belief. My eyes widened and I saw her in a completely different light than I had 5 minutes earlier.
There was a little boy in a barn, and he was like taunting like me and the other little kids. I think that we were in church, but I wasn't sure. And he was like, what did he say? He was like, I got your hair to the other little girl. And she had pretty long curly like pigtails. And then all of a sudden he disappeared and her hair disappeared and she was bald. And he appeared on like the second level of the barn and he had her hair duct taped to his scalp. And it was really scary. And I don't even know why it was so scary, because it's just a weird dream. But the visual of it felt real to me at that time.
I grew up as a little girl. We lived in an apartment building in the Bronx on the 13th floor. And at that time, there weren't a lot of tall buildings in the Bronx. And even though we were in the East Bronx, we could see all the way to the west, even the silhouette of the George Washington Bridge. And oftentimes, our mother in the early evening would call to us saying, go look at the sunset. And we would go look at the sunset. And so that became just something that I was open to. And it was as if she had taught us to be open to moments of awe. And so now, of course, when I see sunsets, I remember my mom, and I'm grateful for that simple joy.
Can you see people's feelings?
I do see things like that. I see people when they're especially in pain or in joy, and I see it in a totally different way than I see either you or the driveway in my mind's eye. It's very different because it's from a much lower place in the body that I feel the other person, perhaps the chest, perhaps even moving down into the body. I feel them more as a body visceral kind of thing, not so much thinking about it.
A few months ago, I lost someone very close to me to suicide, and something so shocking like that can really make you stop seeing in a metaphorical way. No, it's just kind of like you stop, and it's almost like the world freezes, and you can't see anything anymore, except for like the walls and like the sadness and your emotions, and you can't see like the support right in front of you, or, you know, just other things. Recently, through like art and stuff, I've been able to like see again, like just, I don't know how to explain it, just like see again. So I've been doing a lot of painting, and like now I'm doing pottery and just experimenting, and it's very eye-opening. You can see a lot better.
Sometimes when I see things that I think they are and then I see something else is when I look at the clouds. So I might see one thing, like if I see a bowl, but then I change my direction and then I see something else, like a star. So that's how I see things differently.